From being the only girl in a batch of 80 mechanical students in her engineering college, to facing rejections in campus interviews from Reliance, Bharat Petroleum, just because she is a woman, to being the first engineer to be recruited by leading auto component player Ricoh Auto in 1993, to now being the chief business officer at the International Center for Automotive Technology. She calls herself a lone wolf. Our guest today is Ms. Pamela Tikku, CPO at ICAT. Ms. Tikku, welcome to Mobility Outlook in our series called Women in Mobility. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Dipanshu. It's a privilege to be a part of this initiative of Mobility Outlook, wherein you are covering this series on women in mobility. I am really thankful for being with you today and sharing my experiences with you.
Wonderful to have you with us. So let's start off with your absolute early journey.
Actually, I belong to Srinagar, so I was born in Srinagar. Belonged to a family of which was a business-oriented family. We had a joint family. My father was the eldest of the 5 brothers. They were there, and he was the first mechanical engineer from the family. My uncles also went into engineering. Then my maternal side also, my grandfather, maternal uncle was an engineer. My father was transferred to a project called Salal Hydroelectric Project, wherein he was responsible for the project execution, where I was exposed to the various construction activities while constructing the hydropower projects and dams. I was educated in a Kendriya Vidyalaya school, wherein I was part of a co-education school, and there were a lot of co-curricular activities wherein I actually participated very actively. I was a sports person by nature. My parents never discouraged me for participating in any activity, and I participated in basketball and volleyball national level competitions under the Kendriya Vidyalaya. Then I went into engineering college, wherein I was nominated from REC Srinagar to REC Jaipur, and the branch that I was allocated was mechanical engineering, and I was a girl one in a batch of 80 students there.
To coming into the automotive sector, what brought you to the auto sector? Was it just by simple getting a job in the sector, or you really wanted to work in the automotive area?
Automotive industry, of course, was developing during that point of time. I'm talking of way back in 1990s, and it was quite an interesting field. But it was very difficult to get a job in auto industry. I did apply for many auto companies, but I was not able to get job because that time the policy of hiring women engineers in automotive sector was not there. So I landed up in this job through one of my friends' recommendation, and it so happened that this was an auto component industry, and that's how I landed up in the auto industry. And it has been a very beautiful experience to be part of this industry, because this industry has been growing ever since I have joined, and I've seen it growing leaps and bounds, and the kind of technological innovations that have happened right from the time when we had seen Fiats and Ambassadors to now the hybrids and electric vehicles that we are talking of today.
Did you ever feel that it was difficult for a woman to actually step into the automotive sector and work in this area?
Honestly speaking, I'm a person of very low inhibition, so I do not hesitate in taking any activity or any initiative. Of course, for females it is difficult because it's a male dominated area where you have to work, you will be one among hundreds. So not many people have those less inhibitions as I have, but I never felt myself having any rather it has helped me. People have helped me grow as an engineer, have helped me in my professional career. They have enabled me knowing, taking the knowledge, know-how, understanding all the areas where I need to excel. So while it is difficult, but I have been fortunate enough that I had good mentors. I had good mentors who mentored me at every step of my life, right from the time I joined my professional career till now.
So can you give us some examples, some anecdotal stories about, you've talked about working with good mentors. in this leadership journey, can you give us some stories about how you've actually been helped grow as a leader?
I joined in SIAM in 1999, which was an industry association from Honda, which was a multinational. I joined SIAM because Honda was shifting to Greater Noida and I was staying in Vasant Kunj. For me, traveling from Vasant Kunj to Greater Noida was a very difficult time, and I had a small child of 3 years old whom I needed to take care. So SIAM is one organization where I really got very good mentors. I was able to interact with people to the level of presidents and R&D heads and they are the who's and who of the auto industry. So when I joined SIAM, Dr. Pawan Goenka was the emissions committee chairman, and I was given a task to take the charge of the emissions committee. Dr. Goenka said, Pamela, we need to create a roadmap of emissions for India. Since there were a lot of rulings coming out, some CNG notification, and somebody was saying Bharat Stage 1, Bharat Stage, he said that we need to create a clear-cut roadmap. And it was under his leadership that we developed the first Indian emission roadmap, which was submitted to government. And that is how I feel that under his guidance, he has been a great mentor to me, and he continues to inspire me. Then there was another initiative which was started in SIAM, which was called Frontier Technology Initiative. So that time Dr. Sumantran had joined Tata Motors. Dr. Goenka was also with Mahindra and Mahindra, and Mr. Akarte, Dr. K. Kumar. So this was the group who constituted a Frontier Technology group. So under this group, the vision was to that the auto industry should not look at current technologies, but technologies which are going to come in future. So this group then interacted with the Core Group on Automotive Research, which was an initiative by Dr. Chidambaram, who was the principal scientific advisor to India. So I had an opportunity, and I could walk into Dr. Chidambaram's office anytime I wanted. So that confidence, that interaction helped me build up a very good network with people from Indian Institute of Technology, people from Indian Institute of Science, research labs, ARCI, industry. So these all of them, I can tell you that they are my mentors who guided me, who allowed me to explore these areas which I would not have thought earlier that I could explore. And we could do 3 big projects under CAR, which was never done before. It was an industry consortium projects, which was funded by government, where giants like Tata Motors and Mahindra came together to work on a technology platform, which had never happened before. So these are cherishing memories and achievements which I will always cherish in my life.
Very interesting. I mean, could you also talk about the certain decisions that you have had to make as a leader in this whole journey that have made significant impact not just on your organization but also on people now?
There are many, when you are into leadership position, there are many decisions that one need to take. When I took a charge of powertrain lab in ICAT, we only had 2 eddy current dynamometers, and ARI was a big competitor here, and the NATRIP project was getting delayed for implementation, and we were losing clients and business. So my people used to come and tell, we are feeling this handicap that once the Bharat 4 will come, Bharat Stage 4 will come, we will not be able to test and certify because we will not have that experience. And that really I felt it's a big handicap for my team to grow if we have to compete with the competition that we had one Mr. Art Horiba visiting ICAT, because that time a lot of Horiba installations were doing. I requested Mr. Art Horiba during that discussion, sir, can you give us one demo transient dynamometer so that we can learn how to operate a transient dynamometer, because it will help us to train, and also it will create a good reference for Horiba to have in India. And believe me, he agreed it. I mean, we got a dynamometer, transient dynamometer, which helped people to gain access and knowledge of how to test, how to prepare an engine for Bharat Stage 4 testing. And once it was notified, we were ready. So we didn't have any shortcomings in those capabilities. And I thank my director for supporting me, because if he would not have supported, we could not have done it. So initially, to sell this idea of creating facilities is a difficult, because it needs huge investment, and these are investment intensive facilities. Similarly, when I was once sent to Detroit for a meeting with called by EP of USA, and I was not aware what the basic discussion was about. I was said that from India I need to represent it. So it was in Ann Arbor, the meeting was held, and there were representatives from all European Union countries, and also from Brazil. They were from other nations also, and India was part of it. It's there where I was exposed to this issue of Dieselgate that was being discussed, and how the identification of problems that have happened because of the evaluation of certain vehicles, and the non-meeting of the on-road emissions what happened. So once I came back, and I saw that there was these equipments which are called mobile emission measurement equipment. I came and I made a presentation here. I told my director there is something which we need to do, and immediately we met government. We said we need to create this capability to understand what it means when the vehicle goes on road, how does it behave. So based on that, the Indian RD committee was constituted, and there was some funds available in NATRIP, and I could convince that we need to have this facility. ICAT got the portable emission measurement system, so we were ready for BS6 testing that time also.
I mean, these are clearly fascinating stories. When you look at your own organization today, ICAT, what are you doing as a woman leader? What are you doing for other women employees in the organization? How are you really empowering them?
See, as I say that women come from different backgrounds, and the initial inhibition that a girl has when they join is ki, I'm a girl, how can I do it? How can I come in shifts? These are problems that we need to understand. And there are many departments who are not very open in hiring females. But what I tell to all these girls is that you have come here on your merit, so prove your merit. You are no less than any of your colleagues who are in the same field, and you should not shy away from any responsibility. Understanding that, okay, I understand working in shifts is a difficult issue. It's an issue not only for them, but it's an organizational issue also, because we need to be very, very careful, because we don't have many females around. So we avoid bringing women on shifts during the working hours. But I also tell them that you cannot shy away from any other job that your counterparts are doing. So they have to do the job which any other is doing. No special dispensation is to be expected. I am more strict in dispensation to female than any other person. So that's what I like to them. I'm saying you have to prove yourself in whatever way you want to do it. You have to prove on your merit.
How do you really take up your personal life and profession? How do you strike the right balance?
It's difficult. It has been difficult, and I've been fortunate that I've had very supporting parents, supporting husband. My husband is also a professional, and when my children were small, he used to travel very extensively. I also used to travel very extensively. Believe me, we used to make a calendar that when he could travel and when I could travel, so that at least one of us is at home. Many a times my in-laws were there to support, and many a times they were not there because of certain obligations. But it was difficult, but it was because of his support that we could manage and strike the balance of looking after family as well as individual careers also.
What's your take on the future of mobility? How do you look at the future from an Indian perspective?
From Indian perspective, mobility is going to be very different from other countries. Why so? Because we have inherent issues with infrastructure. We have inherent issues in the kind of traffic mixes we have. We don't have the infrastructure ready wherein we can adopt autonomous vehicles tomorrow. we need to have a path or a roadmap to be defined so that we approach to that level of mobility, but in stages. We cannot jump. We need to take steps which are easily adaptable not only by the infrastructure but also by the customer. If you ask customer today, okay, stop using your diesel vehicle or petrol vehicle and go into electric car only, that confidence he doesn't have, because with petrol or diesel he doesn't have to bother that if he sits in a car and he goes from Delhi to Jaipur, he doesn't need to worry that he might have to stop and there will be a point where he will not have any place wherein he can fill the gas or whatever. But for electric vehicle, that is yet to happen. Unless and until we have extensive grids of charging stations everywhere, that confidence in customer building will take time. Yes, for commercial vehicles, for fleet operators, it's a possibility that you can have electric vehicles. Shared mobility, you are seeing, is already taking a lot of market, and it is taking a lot of share from the personal mobility, and its convenience. Basically, people find it's more convenient to travel in a shared mobility rather than having their own vehicle. You don't have to bother about parking charges. Convenience of moving from one end to another end has immensely been enabled by this shared mobility. So this is what I think. I think hybridization is something which is a solution which one should not ignore, and one cannot ignore because it has an inherent advantage of fuel efficiency. There are certain issues at this moment wherein it is not becoming affordable, but I think the economies of scale will make it affordable. And unless and until there are enough economies of scale, the cost benchmarks will be difficult to attain. And also it is the supply chain which also needs to gear up. Supply chain will only come if there is economies of scale. So it's a chicken and egg situation. So whether people should invest in technology or there should be a demand. So there will be some tipping point wherein both these objectives will be matched, and then only this thing can take off. That's what I think.
Finally, your comments to other women in the industry or girls who are willing to come into the sector.
I think if a woman can go to spacecraft and they can also drive the aircrafts, why should there be a confidence not in women working in engineering field? Women are good engineers. Women are very patient by nature. Women are very good observant by nature, inherent nature. So there are certain key areas where women can excel. For example, engineering, R&D, quality. These are areas. Of course, manufacturing becomes tough where there is a lot of manual work. But now, since with the automation, that also is not the big problem now. Automation has enabled everybody. You can see women engineers working in all assembly lines in all across the country and all across the globe. So there is nothing which stops from women engineer to work in any area. I mean, I don't think there should be any problem.
Thank you.